Hi and welcome. So today I want to talk about how meditation plays a role in resolving your emotional eating. So if you're new here, welcome. My name is Michelle. I'm a certified holistic nutritionist and emotional eating expert. And I wanted to talk a little bit about meditation and what I actually specifically use with clients inside of my program, the Emotional Eating Evolution Program, to help them resolve their emotional eating. So just to give you sort of a definition of how I look at emotional eating is whenever we use food to soothe ourselves or cope when any discomfort or uncomfortable emotions. And so this pattern usually develops in childhood. We weren't modeled how to be with our emotions. We weren't regulated by our caregivers. And so this sort of leaves this hole and we have to fill it, and we end up filling it with food, which really seems like an obvious choice because food in and of itself physiologically makes us feel good. And so it kind of can temporarily fill that hole. It can act as a band-aid, but it never truly gets to the emotion. And so a big part of the emotional eating pattern for me when I'm working on it, so if you've seen some of my other videos, emotional eating is multi-layered, it's multifaceted. It really boils down, what I see in clients, to having a dysfunctional relationship to food, to our body, and to our emotions. And so we need to transform that relationship into a more functional one. And so this is an important place where the meditations I do with clients come into play. And so I'm not going to give you a step-by-step process on how to do the meditations. I'm going to give you more of an overall view of how they tie in and play in, because there are so many modalities and so many things that people use. This is what I found works for me. It works for my clients. And I like to go deeper. I like to get to the root of things. I look at things as being based in early childhood and coming from trauma. And trauma is any time we experience an event or situation that left us feeling unresolved. And that is really feeling emotionally unresolved. And so I use the tools that I use in my program, which are somatic meditations with psychotherapy tools like inner child work, parts work. We do timelines and we do different things. I do what's necessary for clients in that moment when we do work privately. But the reason that meditations are so important in this pattern is because emotional eating is a pattern. It's a coping mechanism, and it is a very automatic. That's why you feel like you have no control over the food. You feel like you have no control over yourself when you're going you're going towards the food, almost watching yourself or feeling taken over. This pattern is just so deeply rooted into your being, especially if it's from a young age. And even though you might not think it happened from a young age, whenever I've worked with clients, it comes up again and again. It just goes back layer upon layer. It goes to this younger age because something that happens to us when we're very young, from the ages, literally probably when we're in the womb until around age 7, is that we are really in an open state in our mind, in our brain. Our brains are in sort of this theta wavelength and different wavelengths of the brain. And so it's easily absorbing information and patterns without objectively saying yes or no. So we are just absorbing like a sponge, everything around us. So whether it's functional, dysfunctional, we're absorbing it. And this is how we're learning to relate to the world and essentially survive in the world. I'd love it to be more of us thriving, but of course, if you're here and you have this emotional eating pattern, it's what you use to survive. And so this means that this pattern got deeply embedded and you couldn't really say yes or no to it. It was just being absorbed. And so this pattern keeps playing out it's usually triggered with a stressful situation. Everyone's going to be unique on how they're triggered. And the pattern also becomes complicated over time because we're adding in, we might see ourselves out of control. And the way our society is set up is not to go deeper and not to understand that patterns are developed at this young age. We think, consciously, I'm just going to switch this pattern. And so our conscious mind is really only running about 5% of the show because subconsciously 95% of things are being run, like our heart beating, our, lungs taking in oxygen, and all of these other patterns. Because if we had to consciously think about every single thing that we did throughout the day, our lives would be very slow. And while we do need that deeper awareness, it's hard to live life that way. If you were driving, when you're first learning to drive and you have to be so aware and conscious, it's very stressful. And then eventually you become used to it. And that's how it gets into your subconscious. It's very automatic. And so we want a portion of our lives to be running subconsciously, to be running automatically, but in the direction that we want it to, so that we can use our conscious mind to, kind of direct in day to day the things that we need to make decisions about. But when we get set up with this sort of dysfunctional way of being, we have to go back and change that. And so it's not a matter of willpowering, which is 5% versus 95%. We have to find a way to work with this 95%. And tools like meditation and having deeper awareness and being able to get into the brain, into a specific type of state, helps us to change it. But caveat here, it's not just about any meditation, and it's not just about, you're meditating on anything. It's about being more specific. So we have so many things in our lives that probably don't function the best for us. But when I work with clients, we're working on this specific pattern. It ripples out into other areas of life for sure. But we're dealing with this one pattern and we're focusing specifically on it. So when I was going to therapy, and I did talk therapy, so that's just more in the mind, that's on the surface. It's not to say it's not helpful for kind of seeing patterns, but it's not going in and addressing them at a root level. I was really aware. I was just kind of, everything that was coming up in life, I was just kind of talking about. I didn't have a specific focus. And so that's kind of good in general. But, I work with this specific pattern because it's usually the biggest thing in your life. And so we want to look at this specific pattern. And so everything I do is focused on it. And so when we do meditations, we are using them to really get to the root of when this started. We're using them to go deeper into where the pattern is playing out and actually understand it, not just thinking about it, but actually resolving the events that happened that created this pattern. And we do this through meditation because we're in a more open state. Our brain is just more open to seeing things differently. We're not in a protective mode. So in day to day, this emotional eating pattern is like a protection. And so we want to be doing them in meditations and in a specific way and guided in a specific way so that we're really getting into what's creating this pattern. And we want to resolve that at the root. And so, this is, like I mentioned, I use different tools to do this, and then I teach clients sort of a more specific way for them. They get guided meditations to help them. But essentially what we're doing is going back to when this originally started. We are resolving and giving ourselves what we needed at that time. So we're processing, resolving, and integrating that. And then we create the way we want to move forward. And so without going into the nitty-gritty of each of that, that's the overall picture of it. And so we're using the meditations really strategically, and it is a trauma informed. It's based on trauma in the sense that when we experience trauma, we fragment into different parts. And so we need to integrate those parts. We need to really understand ourselves, and we don't need to put a Band-Aid on top. Most of the time what I find that's sold to us is that we just need to willpower with the diets, with the exercise. We need to do something to our body physically, like surgery. I've had lots of clients have surgery. We need to just be constantly positively thinking, and everything is a lot of willpower and work, but we're not getting into the root and actually creating true transformation. When we get to that basic level and meet the needs that we wanted to be met when this pattern was created, we clear it, we resolve it. It's like a deep exhale in the body, and it creates space for something new, for a new way of being. Without clearing out the old, we are just piling stuff on top. It's almost like we're piling ice cream on top of poop. We're just putting something on top and on top, and you feel really stressed in your body. You feel really, you know, like you're not making any headway. And of course, with change, there's a bit of resistance, there's a bit of growth. But when you live your life for years and years and decades like that, it is not working. And so we need to get into the root. And with the meditations, you feel relief through the meditation. It's not like we're waiting. Of course, everything is building. And so that's how the meditations come into play. Of course, we're also adding in different ways of being and working with food and supporting the body and, you know, moving through the diet mentality and reversing that. We're moving through body image issues because all of those things play into triggering the patterns. We're working on it on multiple levels, but this is how the meditations specifically work. And I love to use them when we have a really deep sticking point. We can't just sort of switch out a behavior. It's not, you know, a simple switching out. When it's very deeply ingrained, we use the meditations. So I hope I've sort of helped you see how the meditations are used. I could talk about this for days and days and days, and it can be very deep, but you know, for most clients, the overall picture is that we want to go deeper and we want to really resolve everything at the root. We want to clear it out and we want to move forward in the way that's going to serve us, and that we don't have to push and punish and willpower ourselves through it, that we're actually creating true change and transformation. And that is my goal absolutely with clients. And you know, some clients need more time, some need less time. It just depends on your level of awareness and your level of transforming. And you might need more meditations than in the typical program, and we can always add those in as well. So I hope this has helped you see how the meditations play a role and to understand the pattern a little bit more. Like I said, I could talk about this forever, for days and days. And so I just want to say, please let me know if you have any questions. And I'd also love to invite you to check out more about the Emotional Eating Evolution program. In this program, so this is my step-by-step methodology with lots of support and guidance, and of course the meditations to support you to resolve your emotional eating so you can finally feel confident in your body and around food. And so I'd love to invite you to check that out. I'll put the link below, and if you feel like you're ready to commit to the program, you can also book in an emotional eating assessment call. So on the call, we find out more about you and what your goals are and how we can support you in the program and if it is a fit. And, you know, on the call, you gain lots of clarity on your next steps. So thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe. I hope you got a lot of value out of this video, and I look forward to sharing more with you, and I hope you have a great day.